So, Christelle, I'll ask you. You work for the University of California, San Francisco, UCSF, the Sickle Cell Center of Excellence. So, you are a fan of the show, and now you are a prominent voice on the show. When you're doing the show, like, who are you guys speaking to? Because obviously you're reaching patients, but you're reaching people like myself who are trying to learn and to become an advocate, healthcare providers. But how's that message gone out? Who's tuning into the show, and what's been the feedback from your listeners?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I love working with Lumi on this podcast because, she said that she originally thought she was going to be the executive producer. And you can see that mind in her as we think about the podcast. She's like, who are we targeting? How are we going to get this out? She's very meticulous about planning what is the point of this podcast? Who are we trying to help? And what is the actual help that's going to come at the end? And so it's a great thing that you brought up that question. And I think that everyone is the wrong answer, but the podcast does intentionally try to meet multiple audiences where they're at. And so first and foremost, the goal is to reach patients. The goal is to reach patients and equip them with the resources that they need to make an informed decision. And I remember when we alluded to this, I was looking up transplant options. I thought I was too old. I was 28 at the time. And so I really had to reshape the framework that from which I was looking at transplant and transformative therapies and do a deep dive for myself. And in a season where I was in medical school and also not receiving what I thought was the most accurate, well-rounded information from the providers that I had, I really had to do a lot of digging. And the thing that I love about this podcast, so many things, but the very first thing is that it gives you an inside look. I think there's something different about reading in a pamphlet about what a clinical trial is like. There's something about reading an informational website that tells you what do you expect during the treatment versus hearing someone's lived experience, hearing someone say, this is what I went through. And I would say, even as prepared as I was going into transplant, there were things that I never knew could happen. And now that I'm listening to the podcast, I'm like, this would have been so helpful. And I love the way Wumi and I met because we met online, and it not only does the podcast reach patients, but it does provide a sense of community. I think Wumi has very well articulated on different platforms that there isn't a community, a place that's home for people who have undergone transformative therapy and are now on the other side. And so I remember feeling very alone and isolated. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm a warrior anymore. I don't know other people who've gone through this besides like one person that I no longer like. I met her once, and that was like over a decade ago. And so I really didn't have anyone to connect with and talk about the journey. I had a few other cancer patient friends, but meeting Wumi online gave me that sense of community. Oh, wow, someone else with sickle cell disease has been through this. And so we hope to reach patients not only to empower them, but to give them a sense of community. And at the same time, I've already talked about my conversations with providers and feeling like I had to do a lot of the research on my own. And I think it's not any no hard feelings towards providers or blame towards them, but the system just doesn't prepare providers. I was in medical school and I learned hardly anything about sickle cell disease, let alone any of the treatment options. But I've learned about other diseases that are much less prevalent. And we learned about clinical trial options. We learned about all these things, like how to use an ECMO machine. I was like, do we need this right now? I'm just trying to pass my board exams. So I think there's a huge discrepancy in sickle cell education, and I think it bleeds down throughout the provider training from a med student to a resident to a specialist. And so I really hope that providers, medical students, people who are interested in learning about patient experiences can walk away when they go to talk to their patient about transformative therapy. They have an idea of what that lived experience is like. They're not going to regurgitate a textbook to their patient. They're going to be able to share and empathize and see the warrior for who they are. And I think that really is what makes a difference. we're not looking for providers to know absolutely everything. We're looking for them to see us and to say, I don't know when they don't know, but let's figure it out together. And I think the Through the Genes podcast is an awesome resource to really get not only the practical and scientific information, clinical information, but that lived experience that will help you connect with your patient a lot better. And I think we're funny. I think we're entertaining, and so I think this is a podcast that's generally listenable by the average person. And if we could get some buy-in from just the lay community about sickle cell, and get people to empathize with our experience and see how hard it's been, I think that will be really powerful in moving the needle. So I know I took a little bit of a circuitous route to answer that question, but I hope it makes sense.